All right, y'all. So welcome to another episode of Full Circle Podcast. It is your favorite brother, Joseph, as always. And if you can't tell, like if this light looks a little interesting, one of the lights in the studio went out today. So I am straight up rigging this thing with my iPhone, projecting a flashlight straight into my eyes. So if it looks like I'm in an interrogation room or the Twilight Zone with a little bit of extra light in a green backlit space, that's the situation that's happening right now today. I want to say it's been a really, really crazy time for me. I just graduated acting school, so I'm really, really excited about that. And I'm really excited to have more time to be able to make more of these episodes because I have more free time. That's just the bottom line. I have more free time. And so feeling really good about that. What are we going to talk about today, with the brief amount of time that we have? We are going to cover the big, beautiful bill that Congress passed, which is essentially Trump's massive, bloated bill that is kind of disguised, at least, as a great American prosperity bill. And then we're going to talk about the Epstein file fallout, what we know, what's being hidden right now, and why Trump, after saying in 2019 and times before that, or times ahead of that rather, that it was a cover-up, to now saying that America needs to move on, and why are we still talking about this? And then briefly, I'm going to talk about the new movie Superman, which I had the opportunity to see actually twice. And I got some thoughts about how that kind of connects to everything that we're looking at today. With that being said, I just want to tell you, if you have been listening to the podcast, if you've been watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get anything you listen to, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit that follow button. Listen, as I always say, it is free to support a nigga unless you want to do more. We appreciate more. Don't get me wrong. We love more. So go ahead and feel free to do that. Okay. So I'm going to dive right into this because, you know, we got to keep it rolling. And, you know, I haven't spoken with y'all in a little bit with everything that's been going on, some of the changes that have been happening here in the studio, and just finalizing everything for acting school. So I appreciate your patience with me during this period of time. All right. So what do we know? So the big, beautiful bill was recently passed by the GOP-dominated Congress. And essentially, that is the first bill of this second Trump presidency. Now, interestingly enough, and I talked about this on our last episode, Donald Trump being, you know, the president with a Republican House and a Republican Senate has not passed any legislation, or had not passed any legislation. Everything he was doing was strictly by executive order. Now, there's been a lot of questions as to, okay, why is that? You have just about every right, essentially, and every authority to work with Congress. But this administration has been doing just the opposite of that. They've been, pushing executive orders and trying to loosely interpret or come up with these strange and novel interpretations of the Constitution to get their way with things like immigration and also, you know, stuff related to what we're now seeing in regard to the education system. They have just shut down the Department of Education effectively with, I believe, over 1,500 layoffs. So what's the big picture now that Congress, in many ways, has largely done nothing, right? Like Congress, minus this bill that's been being discussed ever since, I believe, February or so, Congress has largely been ineffective in this regard, and Trump has been essentially running everything through the stroke of a pen. So this bill, there's been a lot of talk about it, and, you know, Republicans say that it will actually stimulate the economy, that it will be beneficial for the economy, and they're saying that it's not going to add to the debt. Well, we know that's not true. And here's where we can break down the facts and the lies about what's happening here. And all of these things, once again, as I encourage everybody to do, go do your own research on these topics. But let's break it down. Number one, this has been marketed as a historic generational win for all Americans. Here are some of the provisions that are part of the bill. Number one, tax reliefs. So it would exempt tips for up to $25,000, annually from federal income tax. Okay, overtime pay is exempt for up to $12,500 a year, and interest on car loans is now tax deductible. Okay, so that's the tax relief portion of that particular section. One thing that I also want to say is that this increases tax cuts for the wealthy. There's not a lot of provision in this bill for people that might be lower or even middle class. And the general concern is that this can actually end up hurting a lot of people that are not wealthy, or people that are trying to build and create wealth in favor of a lot of the wealthier people, the richer people that are, going to be paying taxes, or for that matter, maybe even avoiding taxes. Because let's face it, people that know about money or are more wealthy know how to do those things. So that's just something to keep in mind. The child tax credit has been increased from $2,000 to $2,200. So they added $200 to that. And then the SALT, which is the state and local tax cap, has been lifted from $10,000 to $40,000 until 2030. Now, Donald Trump has also created this thing. We know he likes to put his name on everything because that's just what he does. So he has created this thing called Trump accounts, and they are $1,000 federal deposits for all babies that are born between 2025 and 2028. Now, parents can contribute up to $5,000 annually to this, and it will grow tax-free. And of course, you can withdraw these between the ages of 18 to 30 years old for education, home ownership, or investment. Okay, so we'll get to all these things in a second about about the things I think are pros and cons, but I'm just going to give you the whole list here so you know. Defense and border spending. So this is probably going to be, minus the fact that the rich are getting a bunch of tax cuts and what we'll get to with the cuts to social spending, this is probably going to be one of the most controversial parts of this bill. Here we go. So for defense and the border, $150 billion has been boosted for military spending, and there has been $50 billion that has been handed over for border wall expansion and surveillance, as well as the ICE agent workforce has tripled to 100,000 agents total as a result of this. Okay, so that's just the defense and border spending part of it. Clearly, a lot of people have concerns about what's happening with military spending, yes, but the United States has always spent most of their budget, pretty much more than half, almost near 3/4 of it, on the military and defense spending, even though we are not engaged directly in a war that is, directly affecting the United States, like on our soil. And so a lot of Americans, I would say, share the perspective that our money, our tax dollars, could be better spent elsewhere in the United States. And it seems a little contradictory, don't you think, that Trump's big message seems to be America first. And I understand that they use the ideology of, if we have a really, really strong military, we want to have such a strong military that we won't be able, or we won't need to have the requirement to use it. But so much of that money, even if we invested 1/4 of the defense spending budget into the United States, into helping to fix our communities, into our school system, into our healthcare system, into a system for childcare, we could actually see dramatic changes pretty much within a generation. I would say even a little bit less than that. So it really shows you where the priorities of the country is. Now, I'm not anti-defense. I'm not support for our military. But I think any person that's out there would tell you that we don't need to be spending. It's almost like if you had less expenses, if your kids are, let's say you have a family and your kids are growing up, you're not going to keep spending money on diapers and baby bottles and baby formula if you're not expecting any kids. That's a very just in case type of way of going about things. And right now, the United States, we're sitting on stockpiles of weapons and munitions. So it would seem to reason to me that we would need to reallocate some of the budget that we have towards things that actually help the American people, things that are affecting their community. Like I said, childcare, which Trump very weirdly and vaguely talked about, just saying we need childcare. Childcare is childcare. We have to have it. That's an actual quote, in case you were wondering. And so that's the concern that we're looking at right now. The border wall expansion and surveillance, a lot of experts have said that the border wall is not going to do much to fix the problem. And as I talked about in a previous immigration episode, most illegal immigration does not come just from border crossings. It comes through overstayed visas. It comes from people that are still looking for work, or they're seeking asylum and they maybe haven't had a court date yet. All of those things are primarily what the causes are. So I don't believe that $50 billion towards this is going to solve the problem. Now we're going to move on to the cuts in social spending. Medicaid was cut by $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, work requirements have been introduced for Medicaid recipients, which means you have to have 80 hours a month, essentially, of work to receive them. And then SNAP benefits have now been restricted for parents with children over 7 years old who are unemployed. With that, Planned Parenthood was also defunded for at least one fiscal year. Now, let me tell you the problem with this particular thing, this particular section. Republicans promised, and this is where we have to be accountable. Republicans promised that Medicare was not going to be cut. They promised that Medicaid was not going to be cut. They promised that they weren't trying to do that. And yet, to cover for all of the tax cuts and all of those, the pork spending that they included in this, to cover for all of that, they have made cuts to social programs. They have made cuts to Medicaid. And all of these things impact everyday Americans like you and me. All of this impacts Americans who right now are seeing an increased workload at home, an increased workload of jobs where they're not getting more rest, but they're having to do more work for less pay. Or they're having to pick up a second or a third job. This is what we're looking at right now, where it seems to be that the populist rhetoric of this administration, the priority verbally at the time, was clearly to get elected, because there were all these promises of what was going to be done for the working class. And now it seems that Trump himself has abandoned the very people that he rode on the backs of into the White House again. This is so concerning, given the fact that there are so many people who they can't afford. They literally cannot afford to even put groceries on the table, and they're struggling to pay bills. Now, I do want to address this because Planned Parenthood, there's a whole misconception surrounding Planned Parenthood. Yes, Planned Parenthood does, as a lot of people know, they do provide support and they do provide help where abortions are concerned. We know all of that. But on top of that, they also provide free health care for people. They also provide family planning options for people that don't have or cannot afford to go to urgent care. They provide STD testing. They provide a variety of women's healthcare tools, especially in underserved communities. So when you're defunding these programs, you're defunding the opportunity for folks that may not be able to afford healthcare to receive it. And think about how many problems that causes. You're literally punishing the people that need these services the most. And I know a lot of people like to hide behind the debates about abortion and contraceptives and things like that. But I want us to take a second here and beyond our own narratives, arguments, and ideologies, let's just take a look at the bigger picture. Because while we can be against something, while we can say we don't support abortion, while we can say that we are, for a woman's right to choose whatever you want to talk about, to be in support of something that denies people the right to get health care, that denies people the right to get, a second opinion about their health, that denies them access to multiple options, that's not right, no matter what your beliefs are. And at the end of the day, what is happening right now, families, their health, specifically the health of a lot of women, is being put at risk. And we need to have serious conversations about this stuff, because there is a better way to go about doing this. You are still allowed to have your opinion. You are still allowed to support what you believe in, but it should never be to the detriment of another group of people or individuals' right to exercise their freedom and taking away the opportunity for them to be able to get health care. Something basic as health care. This administration is clearly, to me, showing their true colors right now. They're not showing care for the poor, for the needy, for the very people, by the way, the very people that voted for Trump. And if you're watching or listening to this, I'm talking to you. I want you to just answer me a simple question. What so far has Donald Trump done? Minus all the people that are outraged about the trans thing, taking, biological men out of women's sports and plastic straws being back, and cane sugar and Coca-Cola, which, by the way, just go over the border to Mexico or just go to a restaurant that has it. It's here. Thank you very much. You haven't done anything. Nothing special. What has Donald Trump done to help your life right away, right now? What is this administration showing as a priority to people that are less fortunate? Let me know, because I can't see it so far. All of it seems like a far promise into the future that I have yet to see expand and materialize. Other than that, there has been a full repeal of the Inflation Reduction Act climate credits. And right now, if you want to buy an electric vehicle, the $7,500 tax credit that you would be offered is being done away with in September of this year. So clearly, we're going to see a more reinstatement of fossil fuel subsidies. And once again, care for the environment, care for the future, care for the next generation, out the window. It's very, very shocking to me, but not to be surprised, because we knew this was coming. So I want to be fair here. I want to talk about some of the things that I think are beneficial and the things that are not. The first thing I want to talk about is working class benefits. They're not many, but I do want to talk about them. The first thing is you get immediate tax relief for tipped workers and overtime earners with that no tax on tips, that no tax on tips provision. And then, of course, there's a strong appeal in some of this to service sector voters, specifically people that are, working at restaurants, bartenders, or any job where you're basically receiving a tip along with a wage. So that's one aspect. From the generational wealth building side of things, the Trump accounts promote long-term saving and investment for children. So I do think that is something that is beneficial, and I will say this for anybody that's watching or listening that's like, oh, I can't believe you're saying that. I can't believe that, anything that Donald Trump is doing, you say is good. As I've said many times, and I'm not playing the both sides thing, because while Democrats have their problems and while they have in my great opinion, while they have used and abused specifically minorities to continue to maintain power and pander to us while not always caring about our futures and our priorities, the Republican Party right now, the Democrats are in the hot seat and they're having their little timeout moment. Pathetically, I might say. But Republicans, what they're doing is egregious and it's evil. Now, I'm not saying Republicans are evil, for the record. If you're listening to this and if you are a Republican, I'm not saying you are evil. But I do believe we need to get back to a point where we can look at something that's wrong and stop pointing to the other side and say, well, look what they're doing. Come on, guys, grow up. We are adults. We should be able to look at what we see that's not right and call it out for what it is. And this is not okay. So I'm going to call out the fair aspects of things. If I see something good, I'm going to call it out and say it's good because I want the country to win. I want you to win. But if I see something that's bad, you bet sure as hell I'm going to talk about it. So continuing with the things that are good. Of course, they have the increased SALT cap benefits, which will benefit suburban homeowners in high tax states. I know California right here, one of them. And of course, that boosted child tax credit, while it is only $200, that is going to help families with young children. That will help families. So that's a good thing. Now, Trump is obviously talking strong on the border and the military to reinforce his base. And of course, the simplified tax language and direct deposits for newborns, that is a lot clearer than all these percentages that most people aren't paying attention to and can understand. Here are the cons of all of this stuff, and I'm going to lay it out very clearly. 11.8 million people are going to lose Medicaid coverage. That should be enough right there for us to be outraged. 11.8 million people who desperately need coverage are going to lose it, even though Republicans promised, and shame on them for lying to the American people for doing so. SNAP reforms are now going to affect the unemployed who can't afford food. It's going to affect the disabled, and it's even going to affect people that are in Donald Trump's own base. And the most tax savings are going to benefit upper-class families, property owners. There's going to be no wage increases or worker protections to accompany these tax breaks. And this is going to add, even though they told us it wouldn't, go figure, we knew this wasn't true, it's going to add between $3.5 to $4.6 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years. And the national debt by 2035, just 10 years from now, is expected to exceed $60 trillion. We're not leaving behind anything to the next generation. They're going to be cleaning up all this mess. And if you're my age or a little bit younger, you're going to be cleaning up the mess too. With the climate, it's going to set back clean energy investment by at least 10 years. So the rest of the world is leading, trying to cut down some of these emissions and make the world a lot safer, and yet we're going to go back 10 years? We're already seeing crazy weather phenomenon. They're already talking about New York and Miami and different places practically going to be underwater. San Francisco. But when you are concerned about your greed and your bank accounts and the accumulation of wealth, this doesn't matter to you. The future generation doesn't matter to you. And I've never seen it this egregiously on display as I'm seeing right now. When are we going to wake up? When are we going to wake up? I hope it's not too late before we do. So it's so concerning to me. The only GDP growth that we're going to show by 2035, economists are predicting, is 1.1%. SNAP participants, 1.5 to 2.2 million are going to lose access. What's the priority? Is it starving families who can't afford to pay for rent, get clothes, buy food for their kids? give them a decent education? Or is it billionaires, millionaires, and corporate CEOs with their trust funds that truly need the coverage? I think the answer is obvious. But if you have a better idea, you let me know. All right, moving on to the next segment here. So I want to talk very, very briefly about this. This is absolutely nauseating, but I want to talk briefly about it. So Donald Trump is completely in a different universe right now, from 2019, apparently. With the Epstein files, Donald Trump is now saying that it is a, quote, Democrat hoax, and that the Epstein files were probably written by Obama and Biden. I mean, like, you can't make this stuff up. Honestly, you just can't make this stuff up. It just gets more ridiculous every day. And when all you have is denial, 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 when something actually comes up that everybody knows for a fact, there seems to be something weird about this. We don't know all the details, but there seems to be something fishy about this guy's death. There seems to be something fishy about the fact that you were this guy's best friend for at least 15 years, and now all of a sudden, he's dead, he's gone, and now you were peddling the idea that there was more to the story, and now you're going to say it was a hoax? Like we all forgot? You can't deny your way out of this one. The DOJ is confirming that 4,725 transactions were tied to Epstein, totaling $1.5 billion. That is ridiculous. And that funds were routed through global shell corporations, including some traced to Russian financial networks. Now, the DOJ released some video with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who are the FBI director and the deputy FBI director, saying that surveillance footage from Epstein's final hours includes a 2-minute, they were saying that there was no evidence in the video, that he didn't commit suicide. They're saying that was what happened. And then they presented a video, but it's very, very clear from everybody that studied that video that there was a 2-minute and 48-second gap in the video. And it appeared as if the video was doctored, as if it was edited. The DOJ is saying that the investigation is closed and there will be no charges for others expected. And they're not allowing Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend and involved in the trafficking of children, to testify. What are they hiding? If there's no evidence, if there's no wrongdoing, show us the files. Let us see them. And if there's nothing to hide, why not? This is a flip-flop from 2019. Trump literally said himself in 2019 he didn't kill himself. This year he's saying, move on. It's a Democratic hoax peddled by the last, 2 presidents. The DOJ, despite all of this, that investigated Epstein was Trump's own administration. You can't make this stuff up. And the White House has now denied repeating, or they've denied repeated FOIA requests, which is Freedom of Information Act requests, for Treasury file disclosures. Now, MAGA base is having a nightmare right now. The MAGAites are going crazy. QAnon influencers are calling Trump's dismissal the final betrayal. And there is a civil war that is taking place within the Trump MAGA Republican Party ecosystem. People like Laura Loomer and Roger Stone and Mike Flynn are demanding for the unsealing of all Epstein-related testimony. Even Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is saying that, listen, we should open these files and let the American people decide. They deserve to know the truth. And now people are saying within the MAGA base that Trump is compromised. So this conspiracy theory that has helped to mobilize MAGA energy, that has helped to, that helped Trump get to the White House, by the way, under the guise that he was going to do this. He was going to unleash these files. Now, it's inconvenient. The diehards, of course, are still going to say, no matter what, we're riding with Trump, even if it runs us off of a cliff. like lambs to the slaughter. But now Donald Trump is attempting to rewrite the narrative, not just verbally, but he's using the government to do it as well. This is corrupt. This is corrupt. And we need to really have a conversation about what is coming next. Because at this particular point, if you continue to do this, if you continue to use the office of the president, the Supreme Court, the House and the Senate to block this, the Republicans are enabling a monster that at some point they're not going to be able to contain. We're already seeing results of this. Can you imagine if President Obama did this? Can you imagine if Joe Biden had done this? What would have happened? Can you imagine if George Bush, the Republicans of his day, can you imagine what would happen if this happened? This is not political or America or country first behavior. This is cult-like behavior. And I thought we cared about the kids. I thought we cared about innocent lives. If Donald Trump's not involved, why doesn't he want these files to be shown? Something is not right about this. But this is clearly showing you the authoritarian instincts of this president. And of course, as I continue to find more about it, I'll keep y'all updated. But I have very, very major concerns about not just this, but any development that could come from this. Because right now our country is very compromised. All right, so shifting over from this, I want to talk to you guys about something a little more hopeful. Now, I know we could use some of that, but Superman just came out about a week or so ago. I think it's actually about a week ago. And I had the opportunity to see it a couple days after it came out. And then, of course, with a couple friends a few days ago. And I really wanted to just watch it twice just to get my perspective from that just initial viewing. And then the second, a little bit more like, you know, now that I've seen everything and I was able to take it in, now I can actually pay attention to a few things. So I won't give you guys any spoilers. If you want to watch the movie, please check it out. It's only been out for a short period of time. But it's set into 3 years as Clark Kent being Superman. He's basically fighting a clone named Ultraman that is created by a rogue Kryptonian experiment, backed by Lex Luthor. And of course, trust is shattered in Superman because of a fight that takes place right at the beginning of the film. And so essentially what ends up happening is that, Superman, what we pretty much see in this whole film is a Superman that's already at work. He is working at the Daily Planet, sorry, did I say, I think it is the Daily Planet. I think that's correct. What we do see with Superman here in this film is a different type of Superman. And what I thought was so interesting about it was instantaneously, it is very, very clear that pitting Superman against Lex Luthor in this story as a setup for James Gunn's new DCU is such an interesting take on it, because you're beginning to see characters that are more like the comic books. And while other past Superman films have done that, I really liked the fact that there wasn't too much of like this side sinister plot. It was just Lex Luthor essentially was a hater. Like, he just didn't like Superman because of the fact that he's like, oh, this guy has a smug smile, and he pushes himself as this guy that's super good, like he can do no wrong. When, Lex Luthor himself is like, I'm the billionaire. I'm the one that's actually trying to do stuff. So getting back to a more simpler basis for Superman, Lex Luthor is just a hater, essentially, in this story. He hates the fact that Superman stands for everything that is actually good and just. What I really liked about this movie, and like I said, I won't go too far with all of this stuff, but one thing that I thought was really, really cool was a couple of themes. Number one, public perception. Even heroes can be turned into villains by manipulation, whether that's by the media. You see that very clearly in the film, where the media manipulates the perception of somebody that society saw to be a hero through some document or video that comes out in the film. And then, of course, what you see is Lex Luthor using misinformation to basically turn the public against Superman, which is something that we see today in politics, something that we see today even in entertainment with some people that we've considered to be heroes of ours. And another thing that I saw, there was very, very clear political messages in this film. Superman in the film is essentially an alien. He comes from a different planet. And so Lex Luthor essentially pits him as being non-human, being other, being this far-off, distant figure that is not like humans. And thus, by othering him and then putting a negative spin on his purpose on being on Earth, now they can justify taking him in. There's even a part of a scene in the movie where they're taking him in. He's like, "You didn't read me my rights." And someone from the U.S. government says, "Listen, you're not even from here, so we don't really have to read you your rights." And that is very symbolic to me of everything that we're seeing right now that's going on with immigration, customs enforcement, and people that, are being hard hit by this particular administration's push to pretty much ignore laws and humanity because of an agenda. And so one of the things I thought was really, really interesting about this is that even though he was doubted and detained and derided by the society, after continuing to still stand and fight for good, he ends up regaining the trust. And Lex Luthor, of course, his plan ends up getting exposed. Now, once again, the one thing that I thought was really interesting about this film, and I noticed it, David Corenswet in this film, he just gets it. Now, that's coming from me as a big Henry Cavill fan. I loved Henry Cavill in Man of Steel, and I do think it was an interesting take that Zack Snyder had, but I feel like Zack Snyder has always just wanted to direct a Batman film, and it feels so dark and cataclysmic in Man of Steel. Whereas this movie, while it's not perfect, and while I think it's more good than great, and I do like the film, I feel as though David Corenswet just really gets the Superman character from the standpoint of Superman is just somebody who comes from another planet and he wants to do good. Okay? He really just wants to help people. He has a genuine, kind heart. And unlike the poster that the White House put out of Donald Trump on that, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, but all the behavior is absolutely disgusting and egregious and so far evil from what I've been seeing. This character in this film truly, for me, it took me a little bit to digest what I was watching, because it's been a long time since I've seen a character who just truly wants to help people and do good. And I do believe the reason why some people are saying, "Oh, this is kind of corny," or, "Oh, I don't really know if I like this," is because I truly believe we have gotten to such a point where we are so used to seeing people that we look up to, or our so-called heroes, fall and not have our best interests at heart. And that disappoints us. But at the core of all of humanity, I believe that we truly want to see an example of people, whether it's our politicians, our celebrities, our community leaders, our faith leaders. We want to see people that actually stand for something. And they're willing to take that journey of life and morality. They're willing to uphold that truth to the very death. And I remember just watching how Superman was willing to do anything to get his dog back in the film. Or he's saving people throughout the city, but he goes and saves a squirrel. Little things like that. He's not perfect, but little things like that clearly show the fact that he is trying to do good to the best of his ability. And I wonder, where have we lost that magic in our world? We're so cynical and we're so dejected that all we expect is evil and negativity, and that There's always somebody doing something that's not within our interests or that bad is on the horizon. But what if, instead of us just hoping for someone to show up and be that, what if we challenge ourselves to be the supermen or the superwomen of our community? Where we actually looked out for the people that were around us, stood up to bullies, and challenged political figures who commit genocide or who try to take rights from us and our children. What if that was us? Because I truly believe that if we were able to do something like that, we wouldn't necessarily need a superhero coming from the sky with a mask and a cape or a suit. They would look like us, everyday people, in jeans and sneakers and suits, in pajamas, whoever we are, we can do good. And I think humanity can't live without hope, ultimately. And so I believe that while this film, not perfect, it's a beautiful film, and it gave me a sense of trust and hope in the fact that good and positive things and morals and decency can still survive, even in a climate where it seems like we're drowning in lies and corruption and injustice. That's important for all of us. America's addicted to myth. That's a fact. Whether it's a tax cut, a billionaire savior president, or a superhero, we cling to fantasy while injustice continues to multiply. But I believe somewhere, deep down inside of all of us, we crave the truth, wherever we can find it. And on this show, I promise you, we'll provide it here, as long as you're willing to look. Go watch Superman. Stay involved in what's going on in the country, in government, in your community. That's all the time I have for today. If you have a question, if you have a comment, feel free to write to me at _Full Circle Pod on Instagram and Full Circle Pod on TikTok. You can also shoot us an email with a comment or a question at fullcirclechat or fullcirclechat@gmail.com. That's all the time I have for today. Have a great one from your favorite brother. We'll see y'all next time.